So a question that we get asked quite a lot is when should you redesign your Shopify store? And depending on who you talk to, a lot of people will kind of give you figures of anywhere between, I guess, 2 years and 4 years. And I think really for me, as someone who's worked with probably over 200 Shopify merchants over the past few years, is that those kind of figures that are quoted, I think really do depend on the brand and also the niche that brand is in. Because obviously, those of you listening to the podcast today, I'm sure we'll be in lots of different niches, from food to apparel to furniture. And knowing when you do need to redesign is really important. I think the other thing too is that we need to think about the fact that, look, it might not be the case you need a redesign, but you basically need some redevelopment work on the site. And what I wanted to do in the podcast this week is to bring someone into the team who actually works very closely with me and the rest of my team on redesigns for our Shopify clients. And that is our senior designer, James Ingleton. So, James, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No worries. It feels odd, actually, mate, the fact that we're on a podcast together rather than just either talking shit in the office or going out for a beer. So it's nice to have you here.
Yeah, my favourite thing to do is like listen and watch podcasts, and now I'm actually on one. I don't know how I feel about
it. Oh God, no, it's good, mate. It's good. It's good to have you. I mean, I think just kind of like from the perspective, obviously, your role at Blend, you're a senior UI UX designer. You work very closely, obviously, with our clients in terms of doing redesigns. What sort of drew you into working in e-commerce in the first place? Like, how did you kind of, I guess, arrive here?
So obviously my experience is I started off with graphic design, and it was just web design. So I didn't do e-commerce. I did a lot of print at the start of my career. So it was just print work and that kind of thing. Then I got into web design. Never worked with e-commerce, but then I did like the idea of like the user journey. The way that you can get the user from one destination to the checkout. I liked that process and developing that and designing that, mapping that out basically. So that's what I wanted to get into more and learn more about.
Awesome. Because I think the important thing that I always find is that, I don't know about you, that sometimes with clients, there's kind of this impression that when it comes to design and obviously redesigning a store, it's all just about the actual look. And I think people get obsessed with the brand. And I know a lot of people listening will probably have seen your sort of brand teardowns and redesigns that you've done for our clients or potential clients we want to work with. And I think it's interesting there. Not a lot of people, I think, sometimes make that association that when you are looking to design a store, you are actually thinking about that user journey and the functionality it's going to sit with, isn't it? I think that's kind of an important thing to think about. And that's what I want to talk about today, really, in terms of when we think about redesign. It's not just obviously about that position where, look, how it actually looks. It's what it does as well. And I guess that's what you focus on, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think the difference is from just doing standard websites to e-commerce. Or I would focus solely on the design, the look of it. Now, before we even get to the design and look, we're trying to map out what's needed and what's the best solution for the user experience. So we do that first, and then the design and how it looks second. So yeah, I agree with that.
Cool. And I was sort of alluded that to at the start of the recording today. Look, when is the best time to decide for redesigning a store? And I mean, from your perspective, with kind of your designer's head on your UI, UX, and kind of user journey perspective, are there any sort of indicators or things that Shopify businesses should look out for to know, okay, look, this is the time that we should start considering exactly what we should do with the redesign?
Yeah, I think the main thing is a redesign. Obviously, I know you touched on either like 2 years or 4 years, but I think it's just the main thing is like if it's responsive, like mobile first. That's one of the main things that you need to look out for, because of obviously a lot of users now are on mobile devices or handheld devices such as iPads, tablets, that kind of thing. I feel like you need to make sure that your store or website is built or designed for this and it is responsive. Otherwise, because a lot of clients, well, not clients, sorry, a lot of users, such as myself, shop on my phone. I've never really done online shopping or anything on the desktop. So if you don't have a responsive store, I feel like this is going to obviously reduce sales and conversion rates. So this is when you need to start looking at a redesign if this isn't implemented in your store.
Mm. And it's always an interesting one, isn't it? Because when we work with clients as well, is that we look to design mobile first, but there's always, I guess, that awkward point where you put design in front of a client, you give them mobile first, and they go, no, I want to have a look at the desktop.
Yeah.
And I think that's always still the interesting thing now is I think we have some clients obviously who understand that, but I think because we've been conditioned, the generation, like obviously I'm older than you, so my kind of generation older, I think we're conditioned to looking at our website as a desktop design. And I think, like you say, everyone kind of knows that mobile is important, but do they kind of look at that and live and breathe that? I'm not sure that they do yet.
Yeah, I agree. So obviously it's always down to the target audience as well. So depending on the client, depending on their demographic, audience, if they're an older demographic, then usually this would mean that they're using probably a desktop, and then you would assume that a younger demographic is using mobile and tablet devices. So depending on what business it is what I would provide to the client. But like you said, always, I feel like we should always show both mobile and desktop, so that it's fully responsive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, when people obviously look to do redesign, there's obviously lots of different factors playing to the kind of redesign. And obviously, look, when we have a client come work with us, we're looking at data, we're using your guys' expertise, we're looking at what those metrics are the client wants to actually improve. But what are some of the things that people listening to this who are Shopify business need to consider, need to start thinking about when they maybe approach an agency to have a redesign? What are kind of some of the questions, or what are some of the discussion points that you would encourage Shopify merchants to have with agencies that are going to redesign for them?
So I think the main objective is understanding your user and how they shop on your store. I think, and also understanding where you want your user to go and how you want them to get there. So I think making it an easier experience, so it's easy to navigate through your store. That's something that you need to consider. So you don't want hundreds of call to actions. You want, obviously, if the main focus is for your customer to purchase this product and get to the checkout fast and easy, you want to make that as easy as possible, and you don't want to pull out so many call to actions so that they're jumping all over your store. So I feel like that's one of the main things to consider when redesigning a website. Other things such as I think, again, it's back to responsive. And another thing would be make sure that your store is fully responsive on all devices. That's another thing you need to consider. And also just knowing your audience. So basically understanding your target audience, who they are, and then you can design for them. Obviously, if we don't know your target audience and how they use your store. This is why we do a lot of user testing, such as using apps like Hotjar and looking at Google Analytics. Like when we get this information, it makes it so much easier to understand their customers. So I think they're some of the main points to consider.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think if I reflect on kind of the marketing that we do at Blend and kind of knowing our end user. And I think it's always one of those things that is difficult because, when you own a Shopify brand or when you own a business, you're very close to the business. And in some respects, you're too close. Because I think, especially with the website, and I'm sure, you've experienced this a lot before. I certainly have when we have clients work with us and say, look, our demographic is X age, X location, so on and so forth. And then we look at the data and it's very different. And I think that's one of the beauties of kind of using stuff like user testing, because it actually gives a more accurate review, I guess, understanding of what their users need. And I think the other thing is, over the past 2 years, because so much has changed in e-commerce with so many new shoppers coming online and the fact that people are shopping differently, I think probably all of our perceptions about who our actual customer is has probably also shifted, which I guess is why that kind of up to date, real-time data for you is so important.
Yeah, it's just keeping with the times really. That's like put it in simple terms. It's just making sure you're always up to date with everything and new that's coming to Shopify with any updates.
Mm. So I know obviously we talk a lot about customer experience at Blend, and what I would like to actually is when you hear the words customer experience, if you're kind of explaining that to my gran, what would you be saying? What is customer experience to you?
So I think customer service is just, I feel like I've already touched on it briefly, just like making it easy to navigate. So
Mm,
that's how I would describe it. So customer experience is making your store easily accessible to all customers, ensuring that there's clear call to actions, and that what you're aiming to do is simply mapped out for the customer. So yeah, it's just making it easy when the users navigating through your store.
mm. I mean that's the way that I would say I would look at it, and I think it's a nice succinct definition. And I think the interesting thing is with Shopify is, look, we're blessed in some respects because we have a lot of incredible apps that have been developed that are obviously sort of try and help people to convert. But I guess on the other hand, does that create a bit of noise in relation to customer experience? Because like you're saying there, if that is making that process of getting that person from initial entry to checkout longer, I guess it kind of goes against that principle a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just also it's not always down to the getting them to the checkout as well. It's getting them to do exactly what you're saying. So if a button's
Mm,
saying like if a button says find more or find out more, sorry, then that's going to take me to a page with more information. If it's going to say add to cart, it needs to be clear, like everything that the user's clicking on. This is down to links as well, so that the links they're clicking on is doing exactly what you intend the user to do, and you're navigating them through to where they need to. Because sometimes you don't want the user to like go onto your product page, like collection page, add a product and go straight to checkout like that. Like sometimes you want a user to read about you or look at your testimonials, like to focus more on that kind of side of your store. So like more trust signals, which I feel like is another good thing. But like it's just the way that they're labeled and the way that
mm,
um, just the way that they're shown to the user. I think
mm.
is what makes a better store. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I what I'd like to do as well now is probably have, we'll go into a bit of chat now to kind of give people some, I guess, more specific examples. And, what I'd like to do is let's kind of delve into that a bit more with some practical examples. So, for example, when it comes to navigation on Shopify stores, we do a lot of work, I know, on navigation and designing that process. What are some of your bugbears as a designer you see? So when a client comes to us and you say, look, here's the current store, here's navigation, and you look at it and go, oh, geez, why have you got that? So what are some of the errors in terms of design and navigation that you've seen a lot of, and why don't they work, those things?
So just to be clear, we're talking about the navigation at the top or
Mm,
the
yeah,
navigation menu. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so when I look at navigation menu, the first things that I look for is it. So I feel like the first thing that we should do and everyone should do is always have a sitemap
Mm,
when looking at a store. So like you need to understand like how many pages are there and if there's stuff that you can move around and make it more easily accessible to the user. And then when it comes to navigation, I think it's just obviously ensuring that all the menu items are clear, they're labeled correctly. If we have a search element on there, I would say that this needs to be prominent. rather than an icon. Then obviously you need clear labels for the cart and account area. I feel like it's just ensuring it's all structured. It's just basically making it easily accessible and not overcomplicated. Sometimes it's good to add in images as well. Makes it more clear. It motivates the user more. So obviously, rather than a mega menu full of just a list of text, it can get overwhelming. If we add
Yeah, I mean, tell us. I mean, have you done something recently of that where you put images in the mega menu with our clients? I think you have, haven't you?
yeah, so a client. So yeah, we've done it. I've done it for multiple clients. So one of them being a client we're working on, which is Master Pro. So I've done it. I've added images in there. I think it's just better because, like I was saying, is if you as a user and you go onto the mega menu, if there's so many products and there's just a huge list of text, it can get overwhelming. If you introduce images next to the text, it kind of motivates the user to make an action. And before I even click on that menu item, I can already briefly see what that product is because of the image, which I think is better for a user experience. And then, like I said, it gets the user to click on it more often, which will then take them to that either information page or product page, which will then speed up the process of the checkout journey.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really good demonstration here, you know, of how I think people need to think about design, in that it's not just the look, it's actually the layer behind it. Like you said, you've got your sitemap and you're thinking about where you want to get people within that sitemap and the journey you want to push them through. So obviously that's a lot of the work that you guys do in terms of, look, if they're going to go from here to this page, want to go here because that page converts and so on and so forth. And I think, you know, that's the thing, is that if you're listening to this and you're looking at your site and say, look, I know from my Google Analytics that actually it's this collection page that leads to the most significant conversions, then why are you then not making sure that in your navigation or on your homepage that you've got a direct link to that collection page? And I think it's one of those things, isn't it, is that we sometimes, when we think about design of a store, we feel like we've got to conform to a particular way. And obviously, you know, a lot of people look for inspiration from the big brands like the Nikes, the Gymsharks of this world. But actually, you need to boil it down to your individual customer. And I guess with those bigger brands, they do have to have, I guess, a bit of a wider net they cast, don't they, with the design. Whereas when you've got a smaller, more niche group, you can then afford to actually be a bit more specific with your navigation. What the one that I wanted to ask is, look, you know, I think the thing we always have, you know, a bit of a laugh about at Blend is that there's always a bit of this kind of like friction, should we say, between development and design. And, you know, I know that obviously sometimes, look, you guys in design want something and the developers like, no. And equally, you know, developers want something, you guys say no. From a design point of view on a homepage, if you look at a homepage and there's one thing on that always makes you go, oh, why do they do that? What is that one thing? And I'll share mine first of all. My absolute bugbear on a homepage is sliders, is slideshows. So basically having that rotating image. And the reason that I don't like that is because I think it's confusing in terms of the message you're trying to get from a design point of view. Secondly, it's slow. It slows down your page load, which is obviously not great for conversion. And I think thirdly, the other thing too is that if you look at the data that we've looked at for a lot of our clients, we know, we can see that the second, third, and fourth images on that rotating slideshow don't get any clicks. So that's kind of mine. I'm going to get that in my chest. I feel a bit lighter now I've said that. From your point of view, what's your bugbear on home pages?
So from experience, I think it's just, this is a tough one. I don't know, to be honest. I feel like when I look at, if we're on topic of obviously redesigning a store, then the main thing I look for if I'm looking at a homepage is if it's on brand, because I have noticed in times when we've looked at like some clients, like the way they do marketing on social media is completely different to their brand identity on their store. So I feel like we need to make sure that these are consistent throughout. And in some cases, I feel like the marketing side of the brand is, let's just say, for example, it's fun and happy and approachable. But then when you go onto their homepage, it's just very corporate and it's not including any of those elements. So I feel like ensuring that it's on brand. That's like the main thing. Make sure it's following the brand messaging, the visual identity, and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Okay. The other questions I want to ask then is kind of thinking, about a couple other, thinking about apps and tools. When it kind of comes to thinking about pop-ups, yes to pop-ups or no to pop-ups?
I would say yes to pop-ups, but I have been talking to obviously one of our developers about how we go forward with doing pop-ups now. So I feel like the most common practice with a pop-up is it opens up in the middle of the screen. And then there's like obviously a dark overlay, and it's just covering everything. But what we've noticed in the last, I think, couple of months, we've been noticing like pop-ups. It's been around for a while, obviously, but been noticing it more often that the pop-ups are tucked away in like either the bottom left corner or the bottom right corner. I feel like because it also is allowing the user to scroll through the store. It's not bothering them. They can still see the store. They can still see what's on that page. And then they can also see that pop-up, which could be a special offer or a new product launch or anything like that, which allows the client to push this to the user. I feel like with a pop-up that covers all the content, as soon as it pops up, I know I do it, and probably a lot of people. As soon as it pops up, you cancel it straight away before even reading it. I just close it because I'm not interested. I want to see the store first. So I feel like if you do have a pop-up that covers the screen, in the center, the logic behind that should be that you allow the user, once they land on your store, to browse as much as they want for at least a few seconds or even a minute before the pop-up. Because I feel like if the pop-up's instant, 9 times out of 10, as a user, I'm just going to close it without even reading it. Because if as soon as I land on that site, I'm not going to read it. But then the new approach is if we did the pop-ups in the bottom corner, then it's not bothering the user. The user can still scroll and see everything. But then in that corner, you still advertising either a special offer or a new product, which is going to, obviously, the user will see it eventually, and it might motivate them to click that and then go to that product or find out more about whatever that pop-up is saying. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think again, it's down to again that customer experience piece, isn't it? In that context, because I think people, I think what always makes me chuckle is when you look at the site and you sometimes have 2 or 3 pop-ups on one page.
Yeah.
And I've never understand that logic. It's like, if we just keep throwing an offer at someone, they're going to, and they're not. We know they navigate away. We've seen it in the data that we look at. So, I think that's an interesting one. I mean, just in terms of, I guess, sort of more, future apps and future technology. Obviously, past couple of years, augmented reality is becoming, pretty prominent. The likes of Nike have been doing this for a while. From a designer's point of view, is that something that excites you? Doesn't really interest you? How do you look at augmented reality as a kind of a part of your design toolkit?
So I feel like I would probably need. So are we talking like Facebook, like metaverse, that kind of thing? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, so part of it, but I mean, even down to, kind of having that ability to, sort of virtually try on a pair of trainers,
Okay.
with your mobile phone.
Okay.
It's just like, I'm just interested to kind of see, from your perspective, is that, is that something that you kind of think is, well, is it a gimmick? or is it something actually you feel like as a designer you would like to start bringing into all clients or some clients?
So perfect example, and I use this a lot. Why I've been in the past couple of weeks is for Specsavers. So obviously wanting to get some new glasses. So they have that on their website, which allows you to take a picture of your face, 3D, and then you can try on glasses. I think obviously with the times that we're in now with the pandemic, obviously we've been indoors a lot and we have to social distance. So sometimes it's easier. You didn't have to go into a store which is surrounded by those people when you're trying on this product. Obviously there is some cases that the main thing is it might not look exactly how it would obviously in person, so you're not getting the full experience. But I think it does. I think it is definitely a good thing, and I think it is something that should be introduced more into stores. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, look, James, it's been lovely chatting to you. And just kind of, I guess, before we go, is if you look at the work that you've done since you've been at Blend, either kind of redesigning a store or putting together a concept for a potential client, what's been kind of your favorite one to work on and why?
So obviously we've been doing this new way of pitching to new clients, where we've been doing design concepts for clients and then putting it on LinkedIn. And one of those clients was Gookie Dough. I hope I'm saying that right. And I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier when I first looked at their website, it was a lot of pink, a lot of stuff going on. And so obviously I did a bit of research looking at their brand, and then I went onto their social media, such as their Instagram and Facebook. And if you look at like the way their social posts are, it's so much more clean. They're introducing more colors. It's happy, it's fun. But then when you go onto when I was looking on the website, it did have all the colors of the brand, but it was very structured. It was straight. It wasn't organic, like flowing. It was just very blocky. It just didn't feel like it matched with their personality as a brand. So I feel like when I did that redesign for that was one of my favorite ones, because I felt like I definitely brought their personality from their brand and their messaging and the way that they come across on social media, and also their packaging and stuff like that. That's all fun. It wasn't showcasing any of that on the store. I think, like, back to what we were saying right at the start, it's like if it's outdated, this is when you need to start looking for a redesign, because it did feel very outdated. And so yeah, I feel like that was definitely something what was one of my favorite ones I worked on, because I feel like it definitely came together and it's definitely got its personality.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, look, that was definitely a favorite, I think, of mine, and I think we had about 5,000 people engage with that post, so it was incredible. But look, guys, if you're wondering what that is as well, I will include that in your show notes. So if you are at the gym or driving or eating your dinner right now, or you're listening to this, do go back to the site and have a look at the show notes, and we'll make sure that design is included as a link for you to have a look at. So James, thank you so much, mate, for being on. A pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's been good.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad
the podcast
wasn't as painful as you thought it was going to be then.
No, it wasn't.
Good stuff. And guys, thank you very much for listening today. If you would like some more information about how James and the team at Blend could help you with redesigning your Shopify store, do get in touch with us via hello@blendcommerce.com. If you also enjoy what you've liked listening to today, please do give us a like or review on the listening platform of your choice. And we'll be here again next week, the next episode of Shopify Across the Pond. Here we go.